May it remind us of the divine spark in all of creation, the power of love to heal what is broken and to be grateful for life's blessings each day. We light the red candle in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement and work for the day in which Black lives are treated equitably, with dignity and justice. Welcome, everybody. It is Sunday, July 26th, and today is a historic day, the 30th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, something that many of us have celebrated annually for 30 years. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Oakland. I'm Debby Kaplan, and going to be one of the people leading the service this morning. The Church of Oakland, the Unitarian Church of Oakland, is located in downtown Oakland, and we strive to be a place of welcome and inclusion for all. And I'm very grateful that, especially now, using
what do you want?
Technology. Somebody, can you all mute yourselves, please? I'm hearing background. We strive to be a community that welcomes all, and nowadays we can welcome people even more broadly than just in downtown Oakland. So welcome, everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deb. In just a moment, I'm going to invite you to join us in listening and centering with Galen Lee, specifically because it's beautiful, but also let me introduce you to the artist. Galen Lee was born with osteogenesis imperfecta, a genetic condition that causes complication in the development of bones and limbs. In other words, sometimes it's called brittle bones disease. Lee was passionate about classical music from an early age. In 5th grade, a teacher took notice and encouraged Lee to pursue music after she had the class's only perfect score on a music listening test. Lee developed a technique for violin, which involved holding the bow like a baseball bat, with the body of the instrument placed in front of her like a cello and attached to her foot so it wouldn't slip when she played. Lee attended Macalester College, where she majored in political science prior to her musical career. She'd planned to pursue a career as a lawyer and a disability rights advocate, but instead, we get to listen to this beautiful music.
And the next song I'm going to play is Amazing Grace. I obviously did not write this one. That would be blasphemous of me if I said I did. But I play it because it's a special song to me. My grandfather was 94 when he passed away. There's a train. Here it comes. My grandfather was 94 when he passed away, and he was in hospice for 6 days before he died. And we have a really large family, like my big fat Greek wedding, large, very large. And so he was never alone for a minute when he was in there, realistically, like at all. Like people were always with him, and we kind of joked that we hoped he didn't mind because he couldn't really tell us if he was like, gosh, I wish they would go away. They're very loud. So that's kind of how the situation was. And one of the things we did with him was sing a lot. And I would bring my violin and I would play for him every day while he was in there. And one day he had not talked in a couple of days at this point, and I was playing Amazing Grace, and he started moaning, and the nurse came in to check on him, and she leaned in, and he was actually singing along with Amazing Grace, and as the song went on, it got louder and clearer, and by the end, he really was singing, and it really reminded me the way that music sticks with us our whole lives. It's one of the first things we appreciate. I just heard a radio show about how babies react to music individually, like at the 1 day old mark. I mean, like, it's the first thing you recognize, and it's one of the last, and so it's pretty powerful. And so I like to play this song to think of him. So this is Amazing Grace.
I pinged in chat Zoom on my phone.
you. Thanks.
One of the things that people have been doing this year on the anniversary of the ADA is publishing statements of what they're grateful for and how their lives have changed because of the Americans with Disabilities Act and changes that the disability movement brought about even before then. And watching Galen Lee makes me really grateful that she is able to live her life the way she wants to, and that we get to benefit from the music. In another time and place, she'd be stuck in an institution somewhere, not doing anything. And I'm awfully happy that she and many, many other people like her are able to share their talents with the world.
Thanks, Debbie. Let's go ahead and greet our neighbors. So go ahead and turn on your video, turn on your microphone, and say hello to your people that you're in the space with today.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Hi.
Hey, all.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Debbie.
Hey.
Oh, it's so nice to
Hi,
see
Susan.
everybody. I
Hi,
wish I
Jen.
could see you in person.
This is
Yes,
Judith,
Natalie,
and
good morning.
why am I still not visible?
I
Turn
don't know,
your
but
audio video
I'll
on.
turn your video on.
I'm having a problem too, Judith. I can't
Is there a
see.
red line over your little camera thing?
Yeah, it won't
Yes.
turn off. I have the same
It says
problem.
the host has enabled our videos.
Oh.
Oh, there you go.
Hello, Judith.
Hey, I see you, Judith.
Hi, Judith.
Oh, you got it. There you go.
Oh. Gone and then but back
Oh,
again.
good. Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Can you make me
Judith.
visible too?
Coming.
This is Kathy Cade. Can you make me visible?
You have to make
Yeah,
it.
I can.
It's magic.
Yeah,
the way
this
it
is
is.
Helen. I'd like to get visible too. Huh?
I'm not the one making
No, I
you
didn't.
visible. So look on your own, like in the bottom left corner, and you want to press
It
start
works
video.
now.
Yep.
Mine says the host has stopped it.
When I look at your name, it says,
Okay.
it asks me if I want to stop your video. Let me try again. Did you get a prompt?
Yes.
Great.
Yay!
Hey,
Thank you.
Kathy.
Okay.
This is Beverly, and I can't start the video because the host has stopped it.
So you need to get Bev
Sorry.
and Helen, it looks like.
Yep.
Who's hosting the call?
Sometimes when people come in after we start, I don't have a chance to tell them to stop their video, so I have to stop it, and that's why it's different, right? Anyway, say hello. How's everyone? How was your week?
Okay, uneventful.
Uneventful. Well, that's really good. All right, well, that was greetings. Now you're going to turn your video off again.
California. My friend is speaking.
Oh, this is Tom and
To turn
Tamara.
it off yourself, just float your mouse over that bottom left corner. And you'll see the button that says stop video.
And then there's all those times when we wish we were invisible.
Yeah, I know, right? Just float your mouse over that bottom left corner, and you'll see the two buttons, mute and start video. Or start and stop.
I'm seeing myself, and I press stop video.
You already pressed it and it's still the same?
Yeah. Let me see. Oh.
All right, well, what we're doing is floating our mouse over that bottom left corner so we can turn off our video.
Oh, you want us to turn it off again?
Yeah, because the whole meeting runs a little bit smoother if we don't have our video on for everybody's bandwidth.
Would you like us to mute as well?
Yeah, please mute.
Yes, please. If you're done greeting your neighbors, please mute yourself.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on to our next thing. You keep working on that. Actually, the next thing is I want to begin a story. So I know that you can think of things to climb. What can you think of to climb? You can unmute to tell me a climbing thing.
A tree.
A tree. Awesome answer. What else?
A mountain.
A ladder.
Mountain is a good one. What else?
A ladder.
A ladder. One more thing.
A jungle gym.
A jungle gym. That's an awesome one. I was hoping someone would say that. So, there are lots of things to climb. Today, I want to tell you about a time that people climbed stairs for justice. You see, disabled people started fighting for rights in the early 70s. I mean, before that, people wanted rights and they worked on things. But it began as a movement then. People began a conversation about how to help each other, how to make the world a more accessible place, how to have disabled people do the things they wanted to do, right? All that was beginning to be a strong conversation. Then, you might hear a little about it, but if you don't, you can see it in the movie Crip Camp. It's free to watch on YouTube. The whole thing is on there now. So what you'll see is that there was a sit-in in San Francisco for people to get 504 passed, which was a section of the Rehabilitation Act which said everything that gets federal money needs to be accessible to people with disabilities. And that was all right for a while. But then, when the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed, part of what it brought with it was the ability to make things happen. But, as you know, power never concedes anything without a demand. And so, disabled people went to Washington to say, you know, this isn't right. We should have rights as well. Rights to participate in government, participate in private life, participate in jobs, participate in transportation. Right? We're just as much people as anybody else. And so what they did as part of that movement was climb up the stairs of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. So I want to show you that video now of this proud moment.
Americans are here today to ensure for the class of disabled Americans the ordinary daily life that non-disabled Americans too often take for granted. The right to ride a bus or a train, the right to any job for which we are qualified, the right to enter any theater, restaurant, or public accommodation. The passage of this monumental legislation will make it clear that our government will no longer allow the largest minority group in the United States to be denied equal opportunity. To do any less is immoral.
So there are lots of things to climb, and sometimes we even climb them for the purpose of justice. We have a reading to share with you from disabled poet Laura Hershey. It's called "You Get Proud by Practicing." If you are not proud for who you are, for what you say, for how you look, if every time you stop to think of yourself, you do not see yourself with glowing light, do not therefore give up on yourself. You can get proud.
You do not need a better body, a purer spirit, or a PhD. To be proud, you do not need a lot of money, a handsome boyfriend, or a nice car. You do not need to be able to walk or see or hear or use big complicated words or do any of those things that you just can't do to be proud. A caseworker cannot make you proud, or a doctor. You only need more practice. You get proud by practicing.
There are many ways to get proud. You can try riding a horse, or skiing on one leg, or playing guitar and do well or not so well, and be glad you tried. Either way, you can show something to someone you've made. You can show something you've made to someone you respect and be happy with it no matter what they say. You can say what you think, though you know other people do not think the same way, and you can keep saying it, even if they tell you you are crazy.
You can add your voice all night to the voices of 150 others in a circle around a jailhouse where your brothers and sisters are being held for blocking buses with no lifts. Or you can be one of the ones inside the jailhouse, knowing of the circle outside. You can speak your love to a friend without fear. You can find someone who will listen to you without judging you or doubting you or being afraid of you, and let you hear yourself perhaps for the very first time. These are ways of getting proud. None of them are easy, but all of them are possible. You can do all of these things or just one of them again and again. You get proud by practicing.
Power makes you proud, and power comes in many fine forms, supple and rich as butterfly wings. It is music when you practice opening your mouth and liking what you hear, because it is the sound of your own true voice.
It is sunlight when you practice seeing strength and beauty in everyone, including yourself. It is dance when you practice knowing that what you do and the way you do it is the right way for you and cannot be called wrong. All of these hold more power than weapons or money or lies. All of these practices bring power, and power makes you proud. You get proud by practicing.
Remember, you weren't the one who made you ashamed, but you are the one who can make you proud. Just practice. Practice until you get proud. And once you're proud, keep practicing so you won't forget. You get proud by practicing.
It is the latest struggle for civil rights and integration into the mainstream of American life. For more than 40 million Americans who are physically or mentally disabled, a new era is dawning. A bill nearing passage in Congress would mandate equal access for the disabled to employment, transportation, and public places.
This legislation is a bill of rights for the disabled, and America will be a better and fairer nation because of it.
I'm grateful Deb has a reflection for us. Debbie?
So the Americans with Disabilities Act is 30 today, and people are talking about we need to celebrate the ADA. That's what we usually do, big celebrations, usually in person. But this year, it just feels kind of odd to even talk about celebrating. And at the new job that I've got that many of you have heard about, we put out an announcement about celebrating the ADA. And as I was writing it, I thought, what is it that we're really celebrating here in these times when life is so difficult, especially for people with all kinds of disabilities? And what we're celebrating is the accomplishments of a community of people that includes all kinds of disabilities who fought for and achieved a very, very broad, sweeping civil rights law that has inspired a global movement with similar laws and similar fights for legal civil rights all over the world. Sometimes I hear people say the Americans for Disabilities Act instead of the Americans with Disabilities Act, as if all the non-disabled people just decided to give us our civil rights as a matter of charity. And I have a feeling some people, that's the image that they've got in their minds. But that's definitely not what happened 30 years ago. The law got passed despite lots of opposition all over the country, especially in Congress. Lots of lobbyists were swarming the Hill with a lot more resources than we did. And so there are lessons to be learned. How did we do that? We had a unified vision. We knew what we wanted. We had a prior law that we built upon, Section 504, that also came about because of a large struggle all over the country and the longest takeover of a federal building without violence in the United States history. We didn't let our broad coalition be torn apart. That's another way that we did it. We went at the people who were opposing the Americans with Disabilities Act, tried to carve out different pieces of our coalition. They wanted us to get rid of coverage for people with AIDS and HIV. And they played up all the stereotypes that existed 30 years ago about how dangerous and awful that community was. They went after and tried to put in amendments that would not cover people with disabilities that stemmed from drug and alcohol addiction. And it would have been easier to get the law passed if we had just allowed those people to not be covered. But we didn't do that. We said no. We held our coalition together. And because we held that coalition together, we now have a very, very broad law that makes it possible for people to live their lives in ways that people didn't 30, 40, 50 years ago. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in our own church who have things to be thankful for because of the ADA. The other way that we got it passed we told our stories. One of the leaders of the disability movement at the time was Justin Dart Jr., who had been appointed into the federal government by Ronald Reagan because his father was the billionaire owner of Dart Drugs. But Justin had a disability and knew that the power was in everybody's personal stories. And he held hearings all over the country, and people told their stories of the kind of marginalization and discrimination that they had lived with their whole lives. And those stories made a difference. Telling our stories and empowering everybody made a difference and made a compelling case to get a law passed at a time when civil rights laws were not what Congress was thinking about for the most part. So we have a lot to celebrate, and there's a lot to think about now as we confront some of the biggest crises that humanity has faced in a long, long time. So Theresa and I were going to hold a dialogue about some of those questions.
Yeah, so I'm interested to hear more about what you think the lessons and gifts are from that time period, and even from that model of making change.
I think now that we all need to be asking ourselves, what is it that we want? We had such a clear vision and we knew what we wanted. What is it that we want now? And how do we focus that so that it's something that's achievable and something that we all buy into? I think that's food for thought and something for all of us to think about and ask ourselves, what is it that brings together the broadest coalition that we can?
The clear goals, coalition building, so those are the main things.
And also taking the stereotypes and turning them on their head. The trip up the Capitol steps was undertaken by disability activists who were all in town in order to lobby for the ADA at a time that it looked like the White House and the Republicans were going to be able to pass a much weaker version of the law, which is what all the lobbyists were lobbying for. And so the activists who were climbing up those stairs decided that they would take the stereotypes of people with disabilities as weak, as unable to make something happen, as incapable because of barriers, and to demonstrate the persistence and the strength of people with disabilities in a very, very dramatic way. So it's important to understand what are the weaknesses that others perceive in us and understand how to use that in order to gain our strength and solidarity.
That makes sense. I'm wondering about one more thing. You'll hear pretty often when barriers come up, people will say something like, well, don't you have the Americans with Disabilities Act? What do you think we can do about that in terms of building community that actually works for everybody?
I think that we especially need to look at who are the most marginalized within our own movement, the disability movement or the human rights movement. People with mental health disabilities, people with developmental disabilities, and how do we draw ourselves as close together as possible, and also recognize the that the most marginalized among us are people of color, LGBT people, trans people, and others who also have disabilities, and people who are the poorest among us as well, and make sure that we're paying attention to what is it that's going to make all of our lives better, and not just those of us. Even within the disability movement, there are some who are much more privileged than others. So what is it that we can do to make sure that we're not ignoring the needs of people who have all kinds of disabilities?
Thanks, Deb. Is there anything else you want to mention before we transition?
No, I think that's it.
Great. So please mute your microphone if it's not already muted. We'll be singing My Life Flows On. So please join us in that.
Above earth's lamentation, I hear the reed, the far-off hymn that hails the new creation. Above the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest loudly roars? I hear the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me glows? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble sick with fear and hear their death knell ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? In prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, the far-off hymn that hails the new creation. Above the tumult and the strife, How can I keep from singing?
We we cannot hear.
Reverend Theresa, I haven't heard a word you've said.
What about now? No?
Yeah, yes,
Yes.
that's much better.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Great. We did an embracing meditation at 10:20, but I'd like to take a few more moments now that we're all together and make sure we hear the things that are on your heart. We'd like to lift up today Kieran and Jeannie Rana. Kieran had a reoccurrence of cancer and is currently undergoing treatment. And Gogi Hodder, Hussein. And we pray for their life and their health and their heart and hold them in our compassion. Other things that you'd like to mention? We'll just take a quick minute. If there's nothing, we can go on. All right. Thank you.
I'd like to hold my sister and brother-in-law and nephew and my fur niece who are currently moving into a closet in their home on Maui and about to be slammed by Hurricane Douglas.
Thank you for lifting that up. We definitely want to hold them in our care. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Today, we have an opportunity to have a reminder of how important our practice of generosity is. You know that money is a challenging thing in these times. Some of us have more than we used to, some of us have less than we used to, some of us have exactly what we used to. I want to encourage you to remember your generosity benefits others, but it starts by benefiting you. So this is an invitation and a reminder. We have a few different ways to give. There's a giving link on the website. There is a way to give by text called Give Plus, and you can mail a check to the church if you like. That will still be received and deposited. So thank you. And in a moment, we'll hear a song. While you think about that and work on it, give yourself a reminder.
The birds they sing but still rain. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. You can add up the parts. You won't have the sum. You can strike up the march. There is no drum. Every heart to love will come, but like a refugee. Ring the bell that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Ring a bell that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in.
Reverend Theresa, you seem to be muted again.
How about now?
Perfect.
All right. Great. Thanks. So I'm really glad we can forget our perfect offering. The reason I'm glad is that things are changing really quickly in the world. And as we prepared for the service, one thing that I noticed is that the way that worked, the way that people got together in a unified front and made change is something that's a lot more difficult to access nowadays. One reason is that over time, our democracy has gotten weaker. And I want to draw your attention to that a little bit, so that as you move through your day, through your week, as you move through this pandemic time, you can continue to think about who's most affected and what's your next right action. So, the first thing I want to mention to you is the paradox of tolerance. So, you've heard that it's very important to be tolerant. And you've heard that we are practicing pluralism and you've heard that more than one thing is happening at a time. The paradox, you know what a paradox is? A paradox is something that sounds false and true at the same time. So the paradox of tolerance states that if a society is tolerant without limit, its ability to be tolerant is eventually seized or destroyed by the intolerant. So it's like an internal contradiction, but when you get to the meaning, you can work that out. In order to maintain a tolerant society, the society must be intolerant of intolerance. Karl Popper was the one who posited this. He says, I do not imply, for instance, that we should always suppress the utterance of intolerant philosophies, as long as we can counter them by rational argument and keep them in check by public opinion. Suppression would be most unwise, but we should claim the right to suppress them if necessary. Karl Popper goes on to say, necessary even if by force. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's any condition under which I can support a war. That's not something that is in my values. And what he's saying ultimately to us is that this is very, very important. There are 4 ways that truth dies in a democracy. I'm going to review them with you quickly now. I want you, in your creativity, in your network, in your connections, and your community, to think about answers, responses, and healing of these issues. The first way truth dies is by open hostility to verifiable reality, which takes the form of presenting inventions and lies as if they were facts. Can you think of any examples of that? Like wind power causing cancer? Like less education being more education? The second way it dies is by unintelligent repetition. Fascist style depends upon endless repetition designed to make fiction plausible and the criminal desirable. It's the systematic use of nicknames. You've heard Lying Ted and Crooked Hillary. So, other repetition builds that wall. So, open hostility to truth, repetition without intelligence. The next mode is magical thinking. Open embrace of contradiction. The president's campaign involved the promise of cutting taxes for everyone, eliminating the national debt, and increasing spending on both social policy and national defense. And these promises mutually contradict. It is Timothy Snyder says, as if the farmer were taking an egg from the hen house, boiling it whole and serving it to his wife, and also poaching it and serving it to his children, and then returning it to the hen unbroken and watching as the chick hatches. All of it can't be true at once. One of the things you are going to need to do is keep calibrating for the truth. The final mode is misplaced faith. It involves some kind of self-deifying claims, such as when the president says, I alone can solve it, or I am your voice. When faith descends from heaven to earth in this way, no room remains for the small truths of our individual discernment and experience. I expect that in this community, you are prepared to maintain your power of yourself, of your life. But I want you to think also of how that power can protect others, how it can create new opportunities and openings. I'm going to wrap up with a word from Maxine Kingston Hong, Chinese American writer and poet. She says, in a time of destruction, create something. A poem, a parade, a community, a school, a vow, a moral principle. One peaceful moment. This is your charge as you go out into your life this week. Even as you stay inside, even as you wear a mask, even as you deal with spreading viruses, your task is to create, even if what you create is more love in your heart. Will you take a smooth breath with me as we close? To invoke love is to approach every day and every person with wonder, anticipating love's arrival. Is this the moment? Is this love's grand entrance? Is this person embodiment of love? Am I the one? You are the one, friend. You're the one who can carry love into the world, into places where people will never come to the First Unitarian Church of Oakland, but they'll meet you. They'll encounter you in their life. Go in peace and practice love.
Amen.